Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show. And what a post-game show I think this is going to be. I honestly, I don't think I have ever seen a game like that before. That was unlike anything I've ever seen at the NHL level. The Arizona Coyotes are absolutely atrocious hockey team, atrociously played game. And you know, Blake Wheeler had said it after the game. He doesn't think he's ever been part of an NHL hockey game where a team has outshot another team by 30 shots. And that's what happened tonight. So in a way, it was complete and total domination by the Winnipeg Jets. And yet at the same time, somehow, they didn't seem to be playing a very good game at all. I got to say that I love this line. Sometimes I come in and I cruise the chat room early just to get an idea of what the show is going to start looking like. MC Stuttering Buddha says, I once saw a guy propose to his girlfriend in public and she shot him down. Until tonight, that was the strongest sense of secondhand embarrassment that I've ever felt before. That is hilarious. But I mean, right off the bat, you know, people identifying the issues, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about in this show. Savage 9100 says, worst power play I've ever seen. They should all be embarrassed. I mean, there's something to that. 0 for 5, I believe, on the power play. Savage says, don't know if getting rid of the coach is going to help. I can tell you right now that's going to be a theme that's going to keep coming up. I don't even need to hear it. We know that theme's going to be coming up, and we'll address that where we're at with the hot seat and if it got a little bit hotter. I'll say it like this before I bring Ken in. I thought tonight was an absolutely huge, important game for the Winnipeg Jets because they had played those five-game losing streak. They walk into Calgary, and we all talked about this, and, you know, I'll get into it after this about, you know, a lot of times I think people feel like I'm a real Debbie Downer. The Jets won the last game, and I kind of point out the idea of, you know, they goalied the other team, and it's not exactly a blueprint that you're going to live off of, and I think people think I'm just trying to bring you know, the team down. That's not what I'm doing. The idea is, you know, did what they did last game, is that sustainable? That's kind of what I was trying to get at with last game. Boy, oh boy, it's tough because I'll tell you this. You take a look at what the Jets went through, lost 5 straight games. They get Connor Hellebuyck to show up and absolutely win them a game, that last game against the Calgary Flames, one of the better teams in the Western Conference, you know, maybe potentially claiming to be the best team in the Western Conference. They come in here, if they win tonight against the Arizona Coyotes, they don't play till Friday, and all of a sudden you go into that game on Friday against the New Jersey Devils, having put a full week between you and your last loss, and having put, you know, 6 days between you and that game where you goalied the Calgary Flames, and now all of a sudden there's plenty of time to get good feeling into the dressing room, you know, kind of put all the problems that you've had in the rearview mirror. Instead, the Winnipeg Jets aren't able to get off the ground here against the Arizona Coyotes. Now they have to chew over that loss for the next 3 days. And the idea, to me, of putting their losing skid behind them is absolutely gone. They are right smack dab in the middle of it with one stellar effort by Connor Hellebuyck, having kept this from being 7 straight game loss. Tough situation they've put themselves in. Let's get into it. Best guy to talk about this, our main man, Kenny, with the best entry music in the business. Let's bring him in. Time to bring in Kenny. Ken, I know people can't see us when we're off camera there, but I want to see if the sweat is showing on my brow from ripping the air guitar to that, because that just absolutely rocks. Love hearing that. You know, listen, there will never be a Kenny and Renny that doesn't have a bright spot in it unless you don't show up to work those days. This is why it's important for you to keep the consistency coming, because as long as we hear that song, there's a bright spot on even the darkest of days. And you are my bright spot in my dark days, Kenny. And today seems like a little bit of a dark day. So what do you got for us, Ken?
I want to start with a story before we start digging into everything
Love
here. Story time. Part of what I like to do in my life is try to help make people feel better about things, about themselves, about everything else. I have something that your day was definitely going to be better than mine. Yeah, on Sunday when I drove home from North Dakota after watching Chaz Lucius play against the University of North Dakota Fighting Hawks, I was very proud of myself and very happy. I stopped at Happy Harry's. We love to support local whenever we can, but in this situation, took advantage of the great deal on a nice little bottle of Grey Goose. Super pumped. The vodka stock was low. I had a couple of extra bags, to take inside after a week-long road trip. The bottle of Grey Goose was in the side pouch of my Under Armour backpack. And as soon as I had taken my second round of things back into the home, as I went over the shoulder to put the Under Armour bag down, the bottle of Grey Goose slipped out of the side pocket and landed smash, shattered everywhere. So not only did I not get to enjoy the nice bottle that I picked up, but I had a nice mess to clean up. I had to get the vacuum out. Anyways, so you know what? $25 down the tubes. You know what? Tough break, but I'm already over it. But I thought it would help for people feeling upset about things. I mean, it's okay to be upset. Yesterday, I was upset. I like to keep the joy level high, as you know. I was upset for a few brief moments. And after that, I thought about the next time. Hopefully, we get to go on another road trip. And the next time I pick up a bottle of something on the road, I'm going to be sure I put it in a little bit of a safer place. So I just wanted to start with that because that was my down and out moment yesterday for a very brief time, but I got over it quite quickly.
Well, I was going to say, Ken, the second most disappointing part of that story for me, the first is that you lost that bottle. That sucked. But the second is that where you were going with that story, I thought you were like, and I was in there, good price. And so I thought you were going to bring it up into the shot. So I brought Renny home a bottle too. That's where I thought you were going with that. So,
well, you
I'm
can only bring.
When
you're by yourself, you can only bring one bottle. So if you have a second person, I would have definitely hooked you up there, buddy.
You're Ken Weeb from Altona, Manitoba. I bet you could have just taken a little detour, come up through the Altona crossing, and they would have given you the VIP backdoor pass. I think probably would have been the best way to handle that. Ken, actually, before we say that, I've never had Grey Goose before, which probably makes me look like I don't partake much in alcohol, which could not be further from the case.
Water today, buddy. Water. Keep the water flowing.
Someone had told me, or I forget who I was talking to recently about it, but said it's my buddy Dwighty, who was at the game, who had lots to say. But he says it's just absolutely amazing stuff. I got to get in on that. So maybe next time I go down to Happy Harry's, I'll have to pull the same deal. But we digress, Ken. We've got a game to talk about.
Sure.
And man, oh man, what a game. I was sitting, because it was a Sportsnet game and Scotty Oak was doing the sidelines, I was sitting beside Kevin Sawyer talking with him a lot. He like me could not really recall a game like this before. This was such a strange game, and I think you picked it up on me saying it. Like it's on one hand it's kind of dominance, and on the other hand it's dominance by a team that really didn't look very good when they were playing against a team that I don't want to be too harsh, but like, Ken, it was utter trash. Like, there were so many moments in that game where the Coyotes just kept making the wrong play over and over again. I tweeted about it towards the end of the game. It looked like they were trying to hand every opportunity possible for the Jets to get back into that game. Never mind the two-on-one that they had on an empty net that they somehow flubbed and never even got close to scoring on. Have you ever seen a game like that before, Ken?
Yeah, it was very strange. I mean, you've seen nights where the Jets have been dominant and peppered the opposition. Now, today, I would say I don't know that was a real peppering for Karel Vejmelka. I cannot believe that I didn't get to say that name on our post-game hit. Somehow I forgot to spit it out that the unlikely hero was Karel Vejmelka with the shutout tonight, 46 saves. So
who Ken is so unknown that when they put the goalie stats up on the board, they had Connor Hellebuck's face and a silhouette because they didn't even have a photo of him to put up to show off his stats.
I'm going to tell you right now, once you put up an NHL shutout, they better darn well find a photo for you the next time you get a start.
They should send someone to run out on the ice and take a picture with their phone and send it up if they need to.
Exactly. But anyway, so I thought Vejmelka was pretty good, but I don't think it was not a peppering. I mean, there was a lot of offensive zone time again. We saw this a lot, Sean. Again, a lot of great shifts for, there were shifts where they were able to flow, but they just didn't generate enough quality chances. Now, having said that, I mean, Kyle Connor in tight, what a pass. And Vejmelka was literally looking at the Nissan sign on the other side, and Kyle Connor hit him in the pillows. I mean, that's another 99 out of 100. He buries that bar down. Just a great example of, I mean, we talked about this whole thing about confidence, and I mean, did 2 goals Saturday kind of ease everything? Well, not exactly, but I mean, Kyle Connor had 5 shots on goal, again, 7 shot attempts. I mean, even 2. We looked up and said, I mean, we're going to get into the power play immediately. But, yes. I mean, the Jets had almost 8 seconds on that last power play, but Kyle Connor had a one-timer from the dot, right? I mean, that's basically the only look outside of basically shooting it in off the draw, which almost never happens anymore and shouldn't happen. Getting a one-timer for the team's best goal scorer, you don't get a better look than that, but he fired it wide. So it was an interesting game on a number of levels. What I would say, and this isn't me painting the rainbows and sunshine, but let's get real. The Jets gave up 15 shots, and they barely had any zone time in their own end. I mean, there was no sustained pressure for the Coyotes. So for a team that got away from their defensive structure, that's a good sign for the Jets. But I'm also not here to tell you this is a moral victory type of game. I mean, it's not. The Jets had to win this game. It is a massive missed opportunity. And let's go right into what Blake Wheeler said. When you go through adversity, he said it's a good thing because you'll find out what your team is made of. We need to find out what the Jets are made of, because after the game against the New Jersey Devils, they welcome the Toronto Maple Leafs and Carolina Hurricanes. So we can talk all we want about outshooting an opponent who's in 31st place in the National Hockey League, but suddenly, Sean, that 9-3-3 start is evaporated. The Jets, by the time the Jets play on Friday, they could be below the Western Conference playoff line. And after they play New Jersey, and that's no slight against New Jersey, they've played a little better, but they play 2 of the best teams in the National Hockey League. So it's time to stand up and be counted. And I got to ask you a question quickly here. And we talked a little bit about it this morning. There seemed to be a little edginess this morning around the Jets group, both in terms of the players and Paul Maurice. What did you interpret from those exchanges from today?
Well, I mean, the players, I think you would expect them to be a little bit chippy, right? And sure. I think we know that there's, this Jets team for the most part is like this, and definitely certain players are like that. And I think Andrew Kopp is one of the players who's joined that little bit of the chippiness, the little bit of the, we're going to show you kind of attitude, right? And so his response, about what changes with a win like they had against Calgary there was essentially, well, we get your guys off our back for a little bit, right? And I understand that, and I appreciate it, and I like that.
I liked it.
People heading out to prove people wrong. Paul Maurice, right off the bat, was, and it's funny because someone had texted me, or not texted me, but messaged me on, or mentioned me on Twitter. I'm not good with the lingo on that. Anyways, and said he appreciated the question I asked, or liked the question I asked, which was basically along the lines of, as a coach, what's your job to get, to kind of get all the depth. He's talked in the past about how much depth and how many good players the Jets scouting staff and general manager have acquired over the years. And, what his job is to kind of remove the barriers to getting all 3 of those lines going at the same time. Because I would argue, Ken, I don't think that we've seen a lot of examples over the last number of years of the Jets' depth that we know is there, going with like what is depth if all 3 potential scoring lines aren't going, right? Or at least dominating or kind of pushing the pace. And his answer to that back, he was clearly not in a good mood, or maybe didn't like the answer, although it didn't seem like he liked many of the questions after that, right? From that point on. So I would
Yeah.
suggest Paul Maurice was just in a little bit of a chippy mood for the entire thing. But I mean, I wonder about this. Now, we're going to go down this road and we can go deeper. So I'm just going to skim off the top of this. But
Sure.
we're going to get into coaching and we're going to talk about this. And there's going to be a lot of people coaching for or calling for Paul Maurice's head. We get that. We've seen it. Every time losses come in, dollars to donuts, Ken and I are absolutely expecting that. Do I think that Paul Maurice is in danger of being fired tomorrow? I don't think that at all. I don't think it's even close. I don't think they've gone down that road. But I will say this, Ken, that well, if you go to 2018, you know, the Jets, I think, could have won the Cup that year. But I also think they lost how young teams like that lose. You know, Patrick Laine kind of went to sleep. Kyle Connor went to sleep. Nick Ehlers went to sleep. Connor Hellebuck was a fairly young goaltender at the time, and he made some crucial mistakes. Jacob Trouba made some crucial mistakes. The youth ended up costing them down the stretch there. So there's an excuse for that. 2019 is a year where I think the Jets, again, could have won the Stanley Cup.
Right.
So that's something that you go back, and if you're taking a look at, do we keep Maurice or do we not keep Maurice? You kind of put a tick in the we don't keep Maurice box there, right? The pros and cons list, right? But then after that, the team kind of falls apart on the back end. And I think that the management group here is very surprised and happy with the job Paul Maurice does to keep them going. Last season, I don't think it was until the end there, one of the things that we hadn't seen from the Jets since they started winning in 2018 was these stretches of them going to sleep. You know, last year, for the beginning of the year, it was like this team doesn't lose 2 games in a row. They did it once, but they always bounce back. Well, that shows a lot of character. Where do you get character from? You get it from your coach, right? And then all of a sudden they have that really, really tough slog at the end of the season last year, right? And you know, they chalk it up to, you know, like Blake Wheeler did tonight. They chalk it up to them using it as you know, a way to push back, a way to learn. Maybe they did. They go into the playoffs and they beat the Edmonton Oilers in 4 games, and then I think that kind of erases that slow end to the season last year. Although I don't think it does, because the next series you go in and you get absolutely wiped by the Montreal Canadiens. You can use the excuse that Mark Scheifele wasn't there, but I've said this time and time again, if Mark Scheifele would have turned that series from getting beat 4 straight to them winning, then he should be in consideration for the Hart Trophy, because if he's that important to the Winnipeg Jets and has that big of an effect, then give that guy the Hart Trophy, right? I just think this stage now where this team is losing again now, lost 6 of 7 games, like you'd said, taken that hot start to the season and entirely erased it, put them in a situation where I fully expect, Ken, when we see them on Friday, are below the playoff line. I think it's just another tick in that box. It's another thing to go back and look at and be like, well, these are the things that we would maybe like to correct about a Paul Maurice coached team. And so while I'm not saying that I think that the Winnipeg Jets are anywhere close to letting Paul Maurice go, I don't think they are. If the losses keep piling up, I mean, you have to go down that road. But what I do think is this is enough of a losing streak now that it sticks. It forever sticks in the minds of the people making these decisions on this team of another time that the Jets fell apart. And I think that Paul Maurice gets that, right? So I think he knows, I think he's in a little bit of an edgy mood because he knows right now that what's happening is building a case against him. And I think he also knew that tonight was a really, really important game. So the team coming out the way that they did, and clearly he wasn't making a pass on this. He wasn't saying, yeah, we just didn't get the balances. We had all these shots. You know, we had all these scoring chances. He talked about those being there, but he clearly isn't happy with the team's game either. So I think what we saw from him tonight was a little bit of, yeah, the stuff that you guys were saying about us, we're dealing with it right now. But this morning, I think, was kind of a hope of coming out and being scrappy, trying to build a fire for his team. Didn't seem to happen tonight yet.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Also, too, I mean, Nikolai Ehlers showed some frustration today, you know, for the first. I mean, this is a guy who holds himself accountable. Oh, nicely done. Very good. Very good. I'm already impressed. I would be really impressed if the picture of the bottle would be cracked and smashed into pieces in my dustpan. But that is still pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Grey Goose. Bring it.
Nicely done by the chat room. That's already an A, but there is a potential A+ waiting for you. Nikolai Ehlers is a little bit frustrated this morning, and to me that was interesting. You know, obviously he's a guy who always holds himself accountable, but he exhibited a little bit more frustration than we're used to seeing. The whole I can play better. I love that he said it, But I think Nikolai was in a situation where his frustration kind of boiled over. I mean, I think that the neutral zone turnover that leads to the only goal in the game is an example of a guy who's trying to do a little bit too much in that situation, Sean, right? Here's a guy who, obviously you're trying to get out of a bit of an offensive funk, and it's late in his shift. He made a tired play, and it ended up in the back of the net, which is incredibly frustrating for a player who's already frustrated by the fact that he's not getting his high danger looks from close in and from the interior, and the numbers on Money Puck back that up. So super interesting on that front. But Nikolai Ehlers is a guy who I don't have any concerns about Ehlers or his game whatsoever, but it's tough when a guy is put into what is essentially, back to your original point about balance and depth, now you have Ehlers on that third line, and he's trying to get something to go, but then a mistake ends up in the back of the net, and then you see some frustration, then you see a little bit of frustration on the power play, and, I mean, now you have a night where 0 shifts for the fourth line in the third period. We're not surprised. A 3-line game when there's no game until Friday, you could have, that's your free space on the bingo card, right, Sean? But yeah. I think that that's something that continues to be problematic. The Jets need, not necessarily tonight when you're chasing and trying to score, but Vesalainen had one of the best scoring chances of the game. Buddy rifled it wide. That's one of the chances Paul Maurice talked about after the game. The Jets' best looks were fired wide of the net, and when a team is struggling to score, that's part of the deal. But let's dig into the power. I don't mean to disrupt matters here, but the power play, man, I mean, what's going on in the power play? I mean, I don't even think it's a matter of it was a shooting gallery and they had a ton of chances. The Jets were struggling so mightily on their entries, but they couldn't even get set up. They lost a ton of draws. They couldn't get set up. When they did get the puck to the top, the shot was almost always blocked, right? I mean, you got to find a better look. And now I understand when the confidence is a bit shaken, the puck movement is not as crisp as it is normally when things are going smoothly. We know they're trying out a couple of different looks with Wheeler back in the half wall and Scheifele in the slot. But what we're seeing, the Jets are far too static. And the second unit had way better looks on that 4-minute power play, right? So I thought it was an interesting situation. I think that was their only chance because I think the top unit basically took almost 3 out of the 4 minutes. And that was something that was a lot of frustration for the Jets, and that's something that's got to be better. I mean, quite simply, those guys are put on the ice to produce offensively. When you have a man advantage, it was basically gift wrap for the Jets. There were 5, I mean, I understand the last penalty was 8 seconds. They had 8 minutes and 8 seconds of power play time in a third period where the opposition barely touched the puck in the offensive zone. A team that is a dominant team has to cash in on that, just like we talked about in Edmonton, where this kind of wobbly stretch started. And it wasn't wobbly in the game against Edmonton. A shootout loss, that doesn't even count. But from there on, the Jets, one of their biggest issues has been the power play. It's now 2 for its last 34, and one of those is a window dressing goal in a 7-1 blowout loss. Now, you don't erase those, just like you don't erase the 10 power play goals the team gave up in the first 5 games, but that is simply not good enough for a team that has a top 5 power play. It's not good enough, and it needs to be better. And I think that once the Jets get away from once they get away from the rink, the power play has to become a focal point again, because when a team is struggling, that's an area the Jets have always been able to lean on because of their skilled players. When that's not going, it only adds to the mounting frustration.
I'll say this, never mind the fact that it's a frustrating situation, the way that the power play is going. I thought the power play tonight, Ken, actually, it detracted. It took away from this team. That first 5 minutes of the third period, it looked like, okay, it's inevitable. The Winnipeg Jets are going to come back in, they're going to score, and they're going to win this game. Then they draw a penalty at around, I think it was 15 minutes and 8 seconds or something like that, and their power play is just absolutely atrocious. And then it's almost like I saw someone joking about it the other day when the Jets took or the other team took a penalty, and someone tweeted, "Hey, can we just not take the extra man and call it even?" Right? Like it's a detriment to go on the power play, and it's almost like, and I joke about this, but it's like the Coyotes thought, "Hey, this is working. Let's send another guy to the box," because then they got back-to-back penalties, another 2 minutes, and it just seemed to, by the time the Jets got back to even strength against the Coyotes with 11 minutes left in the game, all that momentum that they had built up and just were rolling with was entirely gone, and it stayed gone for the majority of the rest of the period, despite the fact that time and time again the Coyotes, I mean, we touched on it, it reminded me of like tonight's game. If I had to sum it up, it was a boxing match between like a 300-pound guy carved out of stone and like a 125-pound weakling, and the 300-pound guy just punched him to the ground, and the 125-pound guy got up, punched him to the ground, little guy gets up, punch him to the ground, little guy gets up, and it just kept going until finally the 300-pound guy kind of quit because the 125-pound guy wouldn't stay down. It felt like that. Like they were just gluttons for punishment out there. We talked about, and remind me, I think I said it to you, but there was a specific defenseman on the Coyotes team towards the end of the game on that 4-minute power play. He'd get the puck down in the corner, and his clearing attempts, they might as well have been passes to the point. It was literally like they were getting the puck. Just, if you can't get it out, hold it against the boards and try and kill some time. But he was just literally passing it right up to the Jets. I've never seen anything like it at the NHL level. They were just surrendering the puck to the Jets, and they could not do anything with it. The Jets' power play not only didn't help them tonight, it hurt them. It was a negative. It took away from their ability to get back into that game. I don't know where you go from here with that power play, other than the fact that I think they're taking the shots. One, they got to start hitting the net. But two, I understand the idea and the mindset that is leading to players missing the net. We saw it the last game. How did the Jets win against the Calgary Flames? It's a perfect shot on a pass over from Blake Wheeler to Kyle Connor, who labels it. And now that's the feeling of what they have to do to win, because what we're not seeing enough of is what Paul Stastny did last game is get to the front of the net. To me, the best chance that the Winnipeg Jets had on this night was Adam Lowry in front of the net, parked in front of the net, shot from the point, and he gets the rebound, 2 cracks at it, is absolutely robbed. But they needed to do that over and over and over again. And my take on this is the mindset of the Winnipeg Jets shooters is that they're feeling they need to pick corners rather than just getting it on net where you can create some chaos, because there's no one there to capitalize on that chaos. And that's what Paul Maurice said. I think Paul Maurice walked away in his press conference with 2 things that stood out to me about what was wrong with that team's game tonight, is not getting to the hard areas in front of the net, which we've been talking about now for 5 or 6 straight shows as being one of the greatest issues on this team, and I still believe it is. But the other one is he thinks that they're not quite fast enough, right? Like that they're just not taking that extra step, getting around the guys. They're not pushing hard enough. That's his issue. But that power play is absolutely working against the Winnipeg Jets. I honestly think that if they wouldn't have taken a penalty, if Arizona wouldn't have taken penalties in that third period, I think the Jets would have won that game 3-1, maybe not even with an empty net. But their power play went out there and killed all their momentum. They couldn't get in. Their zone entries were absolutely terrible. That power play, how you could go from feeling as confident as they did on 5-on-5 to conducting themselves the way they did on that power play. I don't know, Ken. I was baffled by it. It's one of the things that I feel like I never saw a game like this before, and that was one of the things that added to that newness of what I saw here tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Let's dig into this. This is interesting to me. I think that Lawrence, I know what you're saying, but I don't know that I fully subscribe to the theory. I think that the Jets players who are playing in those other roles, I think they still know what is being asked of them, but I do think that right now there is a little bit of a disruption. Nikolai Ehlers is a skilled player. Paul Stastny is a guy he's had success with before, but when is the next, like, what's the next turn, right? So we've talked, I mean, funny, you talked about Kopp, and I agree with you. I like the edge from Kopp, but I just thought it was an interesting time to bring you guys in the media. Well, the people in the media are only talking about 5 losses because the Jets lost 5 games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're not looking for stories that aren't there. I mean, it's a fact. The Jets lost those 5 games. Andrew made that funny joke about the what was the actual term of the blender? A Nutravite, or what was it?
Nutribullet, yeah.
Nutribullet, yes, pardon me. I thought that was funny, but so, I mean, what's the next turn of the Nutribullet? I mean, folks were up in arms about Svechnikov not being with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Well, he's been back with him, and I mean, it hasn't been instant chemistry. I mean, is that because Kyle Connor's not there? I mean, it could be part of it, but I'm very curious to see where the Jets go next in terms of. I don't think these are the lines they're going to land on. I understand totally why people want 3 balanced lines, and I also don't think the Jets are going back to Scheifele, Wheeler, and Adam Lowry either, even though that line as a whole had a very dominant shot share scenario. Right now, the Jets are struggling for offense. I mean, they got 3 against Markstrom and then an empty netter, but I mean, 6 of 7 games where they only scored 1 time. That's a long time. There you go. The buffet for the Winnipeg Jets offense is they're looking to the kitchen staff and wondering when the next round of food is coming out. There's no doubt about that. I'm very curious, but what do you make of Lawrence's suggestion? Do you think it could be that some players don't know what's being asked of them now that there's been this shuffle and the lines are a little bit different in terms of the configuration?
Well, Ken, it goes back to the idea of why did they break things when they weren't, or sorry, why did they fix things when they weren't broken, right? Like I did not agree with the idea at the time, and I've talked about it plenty of times on the show. The line I like to use over and over again is why break something that works to fix something that's broken. It didn't need to happen. The Jets had 2 lines, and they were giving ownership to players on this team that are growing into that role. We've heard about Kyle Connor. I honestly do think Kyle Connor is the greatest driver on this Winnipeg Jets team right now. I think that Andrew Kopp, we've had a lot of people jumping in on Andrew Kopp and saying he looks like, a third line, more and more like a third liner every day now. He had a place. He had a role that he understood. It was working where he was. They broke that up to try and get something else working. It didn't need to be done. I mean, again, I'll say this. Mark Scheifele is a great hockey player. Blake Wheeler is a great hockey player. I don't know if Adam Lowry is maybe the best person to put them with, but those 2 players going up against potential 3rd or 2nd line competition should be good enough to make it rain when they're put together in those situations. They should not require tearing other lines apart and taking players that are going to get them going. And they especially should not have that happen when the team is already going and they're winning. Like, to me, what this all comes down to, Ken, is they won their first game after they tore the lines apart and switched things up, right? A 5-1 game against the Oilers, which may have been the worst thing that happened to them. And I'll say this, we talked about it. The Jets just played their last 8 games in different time zones, and the players came out and talked about how tough it was to go and be on the road and do all the things they did. Well, that Oilers team that they beat 5-1 had just come off 4 games in 6 days, traveling for 4 of those games. That was their last game before they went home. They went through that same situation, and everyone here in Winnipeg was more than happy to say, hey, the Winnipeg Jets are the class of the Western Conference, and ignore the fact that the Oilers had a bad schedule. Well, no one's ignoring that anymore with the Winnipeg Jets being here. It's being trotted out as an excuse in this situation. But the fact of the matter, can I go back to the original point? They won that first game against the tired Oilers team and have not looked good since. To me, if you're looking for the genesis...
It was a 1-1 game the next night against the Oilers.
Good,
and they put up 46 shots.
Sure. You're right. Sorry, you're right about that.
So you're 1 game off. After that, it started to deteriorate. But I mean, even against...
What I'm saying is things went from good to not as good to now they've struggled. And the one win that they've had since then is a win where their goaltender steals that. To find the genesis of where things went wrong to the Jets, it's no secret. like they messed with lines that were working, and the team has been losing since. Things went sour since then, right? And I find it interesting that I think both of us, we talked about it. We were surprised that last game when they put Wheeler and Scheifele and Connor together, or I was, anyways, and not because we didn't know that Paul Maurice wants to go there, but it reeked of Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele failing upwards in the lineup, and it creates the question for me, Ken. Nick Ehlers is on the third line right now. And we're wondering about him getting going, and he hasn't scored in this many games. But is this not the potentially, the Jets reaping what they sow of taking a player who is getting stuff done? He wasn't having his best year, but he was trending in the right direction. Like Nick Ehlers now finds himself on the third line of this team. And at what point, I know we like to say, yeah, but it's not really a third line. The Jets have 3 scoring lines. They're 1A, 1B, and 1C. But do we know that the Jets players are taking it like that? Like, is there potential here for Nick Ehlers, who would never say it out loud? He'll always just say, I'll go wherever the coach says I should go. But should we not be expecting, Ken, that players on this team are responding to the movement and the lowering of opportunity and being like, I was doing well. I was doing what was asked of me, to the point of our viewer. I was filling my role. My role was clearly defined. I was doing that job. We were succeeding. Why am I getting moved away from it to create opportunities for others? And I just wonder if at this stage, if the Jets aren't reaping what they sowed, messing with something that worked because they didn't need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Ehlers still played 19 minutes, but here's the thing. If you're going to play Kyle Connor with Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, then put Ehlers with Pierre-Luc Dubois, because Pierre-Luc Dubois is the other guy driving. And tonight was another example of Dubois doing a lot of driving. He was winning a lot of puck battles, getting things fired up. And I think that if you're trying to get a guy going in Ehlers, I think that the same reason why Paul Maurice put Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler with Kyle Connor, put Ehlers with Pierre-Luc Dubois. That's where you probably are going to get some success. We know they went to that well a lot last year, but Dubois wasn't playing the way that he is this year. So I want to see that again. And the other part too, and it's a very valid point, in a 1-goal game, if you feel like your team is tired, get the fourth line out there for a shift or two. And if you're not confident enough to put the fourth line out, then get a fourth line up that you're confident in, right? I mean, this is part of the deal. So, no, I don't know, Marshall. To me, the Jets kind of wilted against Tampa that night. So I wouldn't say it's the same feeling for me. The Jets certainly, I don't think, put up 46 shots the night that Claude Noel was fired. But yeah, I mean, I don't see a coaching change coming. I do think that, as you mentioned earlier, I think there's some pressure that's being felt by the organization.
I think there is. Yeah.
I think too. I mean, in years past, there were reasons why the Jets were struggling. You could say their lineup wasn't at full speed, their back end was in disarray, but this is a team that spends to the cap and beyond. They're well into LTIR again with Brian Little in LTIR. Their building is not full, and they went from being a team that was leading the division to now is in danger of being below the line when they play next on Friday. Like I said, I don't see Paul Maurice being fired before Friday, but I do think that there is how warm the seat is. I mean, that's people have different opinions on that, but I do think the Jets need to start showing some other signs. And what I would say, there was, if you're Paul Maurice, the one thing that you are happy about is the defensive commitment, because that was lacking mightily. But you have to be that committed defensively. We talked all this morning about consistency. That needs to be the statement. Blake Wheeler said it. You have to play in your own end if you want to win it all. So can the Jets play that defensive game against Toronto, against Carolina? I think we're going to learn a lot about the Winnipeg Jets in the next week here. I really do. I mean, we've talked a lot about scheduling. Well, here you are. Now you're fresh. You can't go from we're super tired to, oh, well, we didn't play since Monday, so now we're not sharp. That's not going to fly. The team is going to play some important games coming up, and how they respond will tell us a lot about the direction the team's going to go in the next few weeks. I will say this. there was a calmness to what Blake Wheeler was saying at the podium. That's not a surprise. He understands how the people are feeling in the room. I think that was an important sign of leadership. But now the Jets have to back it up. He said it. He said it well. You find out what you're made of. Now it's time for the Jets to show everyone what they're made of, because 6 of 7 losses, that is not going to cut it for a team that was, as recently as a week and a bit ago, in the discussion as one of the better teams in the Western Conference. So whatever it is, whether it's line juggling or whatever else, the Jets need to pick it up. That there's no ifs, ands, or buts. They need to be better because they haven't been good enough.
Ken, I want to tackle this, and Julie Sue had said something before. I'm just going to address that. I'm not seeing what Julie's seeing at all. She's talking about issues with the lines before they were changed, and I know that Julie's a big, when we've had these conversations, she's a big proponent of Wheeler having been moved up the lineup, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I did not see issues with those lines as they were. I mean, if they're for a couple of games, they weren't absolutely firing on all cylinders. Is that enough to tear those lines apart? I mean, that team was what did they won, Ken? It was 10 points in 10 of 11 games at that point. I mean, I hate the idea of breaking things up while things are working. I don't like it. And what you saw, Julie, maybe you can expand on it.
I can expand, Sean. The game against LA was a struggle. LA was a struggle. They all generated almost nothing for the first two periods. No, I'm just saying, but I think that's part of what she was saying.
So that line had sure. So that one game, they had a little bit of a struggle. And so that line, after carrying the team for that long, gets broken up for one game where things aren't going. That does not make sense to me. And if it does, Ken, then I ask you this: if this is what we're playing on, and that line's not going in that one game, and it gets broken up because of that, why no line blender tonight? That's the thing that I find is really strange, right? Is we go into this, and we clearly know that Paul Maurice believes in Wheeler, Scheifele, and Kyle Connor. So I get the idea that he's not going to be quick to throw that line in the line blender, because he's wanted to get here. He feels he's gotten his money out of them in the past, so he's going to let them stay a little bit longer. But if you're going to break up Pierre-Luc Dubois, Svechnikov, and Kyle Connor, who had been carrying this team and one of the best lines in the league at that time, because you had one tough game against the LA Kings, who are a fairly defensive team, well, then why aren't you breaking up your lines on a night like tonight, to your point, to move Ehlers, to try and capitalize on getting Ehlers going, or trying something? If there was that's what I don't get, is that tonight I had thought, and I didn't think he was going to blend the lines, but I had thought on any other night, if these were any different lines, I am very confident that the lines would have got blended on this night.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fair. I'm not here to be ragging on Yevgeny Svechnikov. I've been his biggest backer since he showed up first on the PTO, which I thought was a brilliant idea on a lot of levels. But I don't have as big a problem as you do with this incident, moving him off the line. I mean, he's got 1 goal in 21 games. So, and it's not just because he hasn't been playing with those guys. I mean, this is a guy who's trying to find his way in the National Hockey League. He was a nice complementary piece on that line. The line did a lot of great things together. But I don't have a problem with looking for something that might have been an even better version of that. However, I mean, it didn't work. It didn't have the same desired effect that they were trying. And now the blender is today it was stuck on pause. You might have been looking for the blender push, but either it wasn't plugged in or the battery was dead. But I mean, maybe 46 shots, maybe you think you had enough. But if you're not getting to the right spots, I agree. I mean, I thought bumping. I mean, it's also hard because what you just said. I mean, Ehlers had a bad turnover. So can you put him up? He's trying to get it. Make it get even after that and try to get a goal back. Yeah, like I said, it's super interesting, Sean, and I totally understand the folks. I mean, we've discussed this an awful lot, and I think the Svechnikov's been, as you said, found money. He's doing a nice job, but I don't think that a 12-game block was going to guarantee him a long run on the top line based on the production that was there. He was doing a lot of nice things in terms of generation and getting on the forecheck and being physical. But here's the one baffling part for me, and I've said this a few times now already to other people. I don't know if I've said it on the show or not. Svechnikov has incredible skill. He's got one of the, an incredible shot. We see it in practice all the time. But to me, right now, Svechnikov is almost in the Christian Vesalainen category. Where is the bar down shot? We know he has it. We see it almost on a daily basis. He's not getting it off right now, no matter what line he's on, whether he's with Dubois or Lowry, which he's still getting shots off, but he's not getting the same quality of shot. And I understand in practice you have more time, but this is a guy who's still evolving as a player. I think he's been an important complementary piece and can play an important role, but to say he has to be a first-line player based on what we've seen so far, and I know that's not necessarily what you're saying. You're saying that he fit there so he could stay there. I can understand why a coach would be looking for more than from a guy who, doesn't have 60 NHL games yet.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But at the same time, it has worked, so you wonder when they go back to it, potentially.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what, Ken? I'm going to do this because someone mentioned it. The chat room is a little gnarly tonight.
Oh, you don't
so let's
say.
try and bring some joy to it. So someone had asked for the headband earlier. I know it's late in the show, but it's never too late for Sean's headband. So let's bring it into the show here. So
there you go.
There it is.
This is impressive.
There it is.
Now, shout out right here.
Yeah, there we go. Kenny's great.
Incredible job.
Phenomenal.
Chat room, bravo again. Bravo,
Yeah.
bravo. Incredible job.
Always bringing it. Good stuff.
And quick one here, Corbin. Ehlers was just on a line with Scheifele and I think Andrew Kopp for a at least a 4 or 5 game block, and it wasn't working. Again, I think I have time for trying them again at some point, but they were having some trouble defensively, and that's part of the reason why they were broken up. So, no, it has not been a long run of games, but they have played together, at various times in the past, including recently.
And you know what? I'm going to touch on this because it's been brought up a couple times. We're getting accused of not calling for Maurice's head in this point here right now. We've brought this up before, and we'll bring it up again. I don't think you guys understand the job that we have when you're asking us to do that. I get that. As you're a fan, you're frustrated, and what you want to hear is people in the media saying what you're doing, right? But you're a fan. That's your job. It's your right to go and call for their head. We're journalists, right? Our job is to be objective. Our job is to grab the information that we have and present it to you and allow you to make up your mind on this. That's what journalists do. So if I go and start calling for his head, I'm giving up my objectivity, and that's not what journalists do. So I get it. You're frustrated and you want me to beat your drum for you. That's fine. You may want that. I'm not being a pro at my job so that you can get some satisfaction out of this. I understand all of this. This is how it goes. We've talked plenty about it, and someone says we're talking around it. No, we're not talking around it. I've been talking about this for the longest time. I've said since the first game, Ken, you can back me up on this. The first game when they beat the Oilers 5-1, I said in that show, and I took a bit of a beating for it in the chat room, that I didn't like that move, that I thought it had potential to cause problems, right? We talk about this. We present to you the facts of what things are going on. The fact is, shortly after Paul Maurice made that move, the team has been struggling. Now, you can take that information and you can decide from that if you believe whether or not you can lay this at the feet of Paul Maurice or not. That's what you do. That's the job. You get to take the information and we present to you, and you get to do something with it. But if you're looking for us to go to come out here and start waving a flag and bring out the pitchforks and ask for Paul Maurice to be fired, you're on the wrong place. Go to a fan blog where fans can go and do that, where journalists were pros. It is not part of my job description to give up my objectivity in order to make you happy. That's not how it works. Ken, where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, and the other part too, we're talking about, Paul Maurice isn't perfect. There are things that we don't agree with. We discuss those things and you move on. The other part of it is if
I'm not a writer. I don't write. I'm not, that's sorry. anyways, go on.
And it's okay to have an opinion. And I mean, here's the whole thing about the Jets have quit or tuned out Maurice. I mean, there just isn't evidence of that. Some folks would say, well, what about Friday afternoon? Well, Friday afternoon was a horrible game by the Jets. But I would also remind you to look over the history books. I would say that even the Tampa Bay Lightning, you probably have one of those every 25 to 40 games. And there's probably 3 of them during the year. Coaches hate those games. You want to get off the ice and off the bench as quickly as possible, but it happens to all teams. So we understand with the recency bias and everything else that it feels like it's happening all the time. But I mean, 1 out of 20 is not an indictment of a team quitting or on their coach. I mean, it just simply isn't. And if that were the case, the Jets would have got blown out on Saturday, and they wouldn't have dominated in some regards their opponent today. Having said that, there are things they need to do better. The coaching staff is in charge of special teams. Ultimately, there needs to be execution. Like we said, I'm not blaming Nikolai Ehlers, but there's nothing a coach could have done about a neutral zone turnover that went into the net. Could you talk about the deployment? Of course, we are talking about that. That's part of the job. A coach
we're talking about all of this. Kevin.
The coach has his moves discussed, debated, criticized, praised, all of it. But to say the Jets have quit on Maurice, I just don't think that that's accurate. So,
sure, yeah, okay. You know what I think is funny? It's been brought up here a couple
times. Get that
times.
off there. That's ridiculous.
The ESPN curse.
Sorry.
I think it's hilarious about the ESPN thing.
Yeah, wait until the next rankings.
I thought it was, but it's funny. And
let's get Emily on right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I'm not giving them credit for this, because I totally think that when they wrote that list, that it was like they just totally missed the boat on that. But at the same time, it's kind of hilarious because I would argue 20th is where they had the Jets on that list. That is right around where I see the Winnipeg Jets in the NHL right now. Like, if you take a look at what's happening in the standings right now, there's teams with games in hand. So I'm not saying this will happen, and it won't happen, but there's potential for it to happen in the standings, that the San Jose Sharks have a game in hand. If they won that game, they would leapfrog the Jets. The Nashville Predators, game in hand, 1 point back, would leapfrog the Jets. The Dallas Stars have 2 games in hand and are 2 points back and are absolutely on fire, are clearly a better hockey team than the Winnipeg Jets right now. The Colorado Avalanche, 1 point back with 4 games in hand, are absolutely, I think they've won 7 of 8 or something like that. Like, if you're taking a look at this, the Jets could fall all the way down to about like sitting right above Seattle and Chicago, the way that things are going right now. ESPN has it bang on, and I think it's entirely by accident. But
it definitely was by accident.
I like that people are saying that it's a curse, because it seems like the Jets were going, and then ESPN threw it out there, and it's like they threw out a giant magnet that the Jets keep getting sucked towards down in that spot.
Excuse me, Freaky Fresh. I think you need to listen a little more closely in this situation. I've mentioned a lot of things the Jets need to be better at, and when I say they need to find out what they're made of, I don't think they're a non-playoff team. So if they don't answer the challenge in the next little while, things are going to happen. I mean, I'm not saying there's going to be major changes, but accepting mediocrity, I don't even really know what that means. I've been saying the whole show the Jets need to be better, whether it's on the power play or scoring goals or whatever else. So,
again, some people aren't going to be happy until we come out and take a side and take an opinion. Again, we've explained this. If they don't get it, that's on them. Leave it as it goes.
All good.
Let's go to where you think the Jets' confidence level is with this. You talked about Blake Wheeler being like pretty calm throughout that. But I wonder where their confidence is at this, and I'm going to attach that to Ken, that losing streak that they went on at the end of the season last season. That was where they were supposed to have kind of learned these lessons and learned how to work their way out of this. That's where they got the Harry Houdini magic lessons and figured out how to escape the straitjacket they find themselves in right now. It looks like they're struggling mightily with that straitjacket. Where do you see their confidence level? Because, if we were expecting a bounce back after that last game, it clearly was not on display tonight.
Yeah, that is an interesting development as well. And that was talked about this morning also. And I don't think that the Jets, are a fragile team like they were maybe against the Minnesota Wild, but it is clear they're not feeling 100% confident. Blake Wheeler kind of admitted it when it came to the power play. When you are confident, you're moving the puck more crisply, more effectively, more quickly. You're getting better chances. That's not happening right now. I don't think the Jets have suddenly fallen off a cliff and forgot how to play hockey. I mean, that simply can't be the case. Their defensive game was much better, but you can't be feeling, if you lose 6 of 7, you can't be feeling your complete confidence, Sean. That just isn't the way that sports works. You aren't just sitting there saying, we're just really this close, and it's this close to being perfect. Well, no, I mean, the Jets kind of abandoned their structure for a few games. I mean, now they're sort of trying to backtrack and say, it was really only that one bad game. Well, no. I mean, it was a bad third period against Pittsburgh. Even though it was a 2-0 game against Columbus, but it wasn't a very strong game against Columbus. Elvis had to be really good, but he didn't have to be great. And then the next game, they got their doors blown off. They did a nice job of goaling. Like, this is classic. Like Paul Stastny's comment after the game, Sean. There are going to be lots of games where the Jets don't play well enough, but find a way to win. Well, that was Saturday, right? That snapped the streak. That was a great example. They didn't need to look any further than their last game. But now they had a game where they probably should have won, but they didn't. So if you lose 6 of 7, of course your confidence has to be frayed a little bit. I don't think it's shattered by any stretch of the imagination, but you can't be feeling great about yourself. So this is what I would say. I mean, the ability to turn off the brain when it comes to hockey tomorrow after a long stretch. They had 5 of 6 on the road. They have 9 of 13 at home. So by the end of the stretch, you don't want to be hearing about that was too long a time at home. When you're at home, you got to make hay and you have to play your best hockey and you have to be refreshed because there are going to be 9 more back-to-backs. So if you can't get refreshed and get it sorted out, well, then there's going to be a real problem. And right now, we'll see how the Jets respond. I mean, this is a great time for them to reset tomorrow, go back to work, and then get going on the things that have been struggling. They will be much happier about their defensive zone play than they were a couple games ago. But that is the foundation. They got to get the offensive part sorted out. They can say whatever they want about being confident and not being worried about the offensive game, but you got to show it. But it all comes off of how they play defensively. Their defensive zone commitment has to be the baseline. This is also what we talked about, Sean. That's now 10 of 11 games where Connor Hellebuck has given up 2 or fewer. The Jets have only won 4 of those games. That if your goalie is doing that for you, you need to win more of those games. 4 wins in that stretch of time is not enough.
I wonder, Ken, about the fire. Like, remember the last time when they needed to kind of get out of that? It was Stastny who came out and basically said, like, this has been coming for a long time. We've been doing this for a long time. And kind of came out and faced it, right? Threw it out there. But we know that it kind of caught the rest of the Jets off guard. We know that. Behind the scenes, we know him coming out and doing that kind of put all the rest of the Jets coming out, who usually like to handle this in the calm way that you're hearing from Blake Wheeler and that we saw from Stastny tonight as well. But, we saw fire from Connor Hellebuck after that 7-1 drop, and he came out and he backed that up. Should we be seeing more fire from this team? I mean, is it maybe just what this team kind of needs to knock things loose and get things going, is be a little more fiery? And I guess it's a long way of me asking, do we need to see more from them? Is maybe calm at this stage not acceptable? Do they need to be angry?
For me, Sean, I mean, I think Connor Hellebuck was perfect to have that after a blowout loss. I mean, I don't think you come out after a day like today. I mean, and we've also seen it more recently. Remember Kyle Connor? After Andrew Kopp said he thought they had played pretty well, Connor's like, we didn't play well enough against Pittsburgh. So for Kyle Connor, that was showing fire. Don't you agree?
Yeah, yes, I do. Yeah.
So
which is what, and
you can't do it every single
goes,
game.
Right?
To me, I don't think you can say it every single game, and I don't think that you're out there yelling and saying we got to be better. You can't lose to a team that's 31st. I don't know what kind of value that has after today's game, to be perfectly honest. We watched them. They were not happy about it. But, I mean, Paul Stastny has probably some of the best perspective in the NHL. So I'm not surprised at how he handled it. And I also think that this is nothing like the way the Jets played when they were cheating the game. There were some lapses during this stretch of 6 of 7, but I don't think it was anywhere near the level of deterioration that we saw last year during that 7-game skid. So I don't think the same level of fire would be a necessity. And the other part that I would say, Sean, that is an important thing for anyone in the chat, and the thing with Stastny, because he missed those 8 games, it's not harder for him to weigh in, but it's harder for him to point a collective finger when you haven't been part of it. So I would think that that's part of the reason. And the other part is that they're just not playing as badly as they were during that stretch either. And I don't think that during those wins, like we said it, like we always say, check the receipts. If we went back to the tape after the game against Edmonton, and even the game after that they lost in the shootout, the template was on display. So it's not like before the stretch of losses of 5 in a row that the Jets were playing poorly. They literally played their best hockey when the streak was starting. So to me, I don't see the same. I mean, the parallel is that it's almost the same number of games. To me, that's where the parallel ends, with the exception of a couple of hiccups, rather than an extended stretch.
I think Roscoe Picotrain has it here where he says, let's see if I've got this right. Too tired, too many different time zones, too many COVID cases, too blank, laugh out loud. I'll say this. Whenever I do hear those things and I hear that conversation, I kind of fall into what you'd said earlier in the show, and that there's no time for moral wins in this. Like, this is a game you had to have. And they did, while the Jets did say that, you know what? I'd almost appreciate one of those press conferences where they come out and they're surly and they're like, we need to do better. This wasn't enough, despite the fact we shot and did this and did that. Like, and I mean, it's easy for me to say that. It seems like the Winnipeg Jets, the last time they got out of a funk like this, it was a slow build, right? Not every team can just like snap their fingers and turn it around. So if you need to create a slow build, maybe that starts by focusing on what went right, and this was okay, and this was okay, and we're going to keep that element of our game, and we're going to add to it. And Paul Maurice pretty much said as much. That's the plan, right? Keep what's working, add a little bit as you go. But I don't know, sometimes I think there's just an idea of like, this is, you know, it would be nice to hear someone on that team say, this is not who we are. This is not what we're capable of. We're capable of so much more. And there's just no more time for excuses. We need to get to that. It would be nice to hear that. Ken, do you have any final thoughts?
We heard that on Friday, right? We heard that from Hellebuck on Friday. I just don't think you can go to the whip every time unless you played terrible. If you got outshot 46-15 today, then I would have expected fire, like what you say. If you lose even 1-0 to a 31st ranked team, then you can go wild. But it's like you said, like the Jets literally did not give up any sustained zone time. So to go out and say that they were terrible, I think that's kind of false hustle if you're giving it the we were awful. You know what I mean? Like, do they need to be better? Of course. I'm not making an excuse for them, but they needed to be better and they needed that game. But in this situation, I think that taking a deep breath, getting away from the rink, and going back, if they struggle on Friday night, give me some fire. Yeah. But I think that today a measured approach was the right approach.
Well, I don't think it's going to get any easier. When I was looking through the standings there, I mean, the New Jersey Devils are 2 points, I think, behind the Winnipeg Jets, but they've got a game in hand. It's essentially the same team.
Columbus, same idea as Columbus.
Exactly. You're not looking over and seeing a middling team come out, and this is where we capitalize on it. Tonight was that game. Never mind middling, a bottom team. But the New Jersey Devils at this stage have showed they're just as capable as the Winnipeg Jets are. So it's going to be a tough grind, and you mentioned a couple really tough games coming up. If the Jets don't get things going, it's going to get very tough. Before I shut us down here, just wanted to show this off. I don't know if you got one.
It's I did. The annual I dropped Christmas it off card. For you, buddy. I dropped it
Thank
off
for you very much. It's the annual Christmas card from our main man, Dancing Gabe, who had it listed as for Sean Renny Reynolds. I absolutely love that. We know he's watching the podcast here or there. It was a fiery one tonight. We fully expected it. Sometimes we bark back a little bit here. I know that this happens. One of the reasons we do this, and one of the things that we love about this, is I think sometimes people have expectations of us in our jobs, and maybe those expectations are a little bit different. It's like asking a train conductor to, go fix the lines, right? There's different jobs. There's different things. I get the idea of people saying that, hey, if I were a columnist, there would be articles that I would be writing, because that's their job. Their job is to take a stand, take an opinion, and build the case for that. That's not what I do. It's not what you do, Ken. So when people are asking for that, listen, take what we say, and if you're listening, the criticisms that you're looking for are all there. We're having these conversations. This is the place we hack them out. But if you're looking for us to take a stand and start beating the drum, it's not going to happen. That's your job, and you do it so well, as you always do. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up, leaving your comments. We appreciate every last one of you. If you appreciate us, it would be great if you would come and drop a like and a subscribe on our YouTube page so you can see more of this. We love spending time with you, and again, we're just so impressed with the 350 people who showed up here at one point and more to get fired up here. Really appreciate it. Ken, you got something to say?
Yeah, just a reminder for folks. I know last week we were off because of U.S. Thanksgiving and some travel, but our long-form show will be back on track 3 p.m. on Thursday after Hustler on the Winnipeg Sports Talk. So we're working out the guests, but we hope you'll join us then, and then also come back Friday post-game after the Devils game. Thanks for joining us as usual.
Awesome stuff. Ken, do you have ice tickets to give away?
I think their next game is on Friday, so we'll give them away during the Thursday show. But if you're interested, you can already send me the emails or Twitter. Yeah.
If you want to go get a hold of Ken, like someone said on the last video, just show up at his door. He'd really appreciate that. Find out where Ken lives, show up at his front door, and demand the tickets. That's a good way to go.
I don't have the tickets in hand. Otherwise, I'm a very hospitable person. Maybe after COVID's over, but the nice hint. We may have a little Kenny and Renny meetup at some point here, but I don't think it's going to be at my house.
Yes, no, we're going out this Saturday. I'm going to meet the lovely Stacy. You've met my wife Laura before. It's going to be great. One of our guys on here, one of the Richard Medeiros, who does Energy 21 Design and who designed our logo for us, is onto a restaurant venture. We're going to go check that out because we got the invite from him. So thank you for that, Richard. We'll see you on Friday. Thank you all for Saturday. Thank you all. We appreciate your time. Come see us again on Friday. And I'm sure the Jets are going to, either way, give us plenty to talk about. We will see. we will see. Someone's been paying attention. We will see you on Thursday for our long form.